Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at my beautiful box set on things to do on fabric. Now this came out of me experimenting again, trying things, making samples, and then decided to keep the samples. Now if you've seen my previous video on tie and dye, you'll have noticed that I made that one into a book. I didn't do a book for this one, I made it into a box set. So I've kept each sample separate, which means instead of having one big bulky book, I can hand it out in class and pass the samples around and people can look at them. But I've also got this gorgeous box, which is something I wanted to show you. I hand embroidered things to do on fabric. It's got a little frog clip there, so my beads have fallen off. And there's all sorts of, the entire backwork is just crazy patchwork. So not crazy quilting, there's no quilting in it, it's crazy patchwork. So I've just patched bits and pieces of fabric together. I actually bought a dress in a market in Birmingham years ago just because I wanted this piece of embroidery, and I've used it on lots of stuff. So there's another piece of the dress right here, that gorgeous fabric. It's been wrapped inside and out, and that's just the box. Now we're going to have a look inside. Okay, so you'll notice that the design on these are pretty much the same on each sample, and that's because I started out with this. This was a design that a student had done. It's a block print. She had used it for a what we call an SBA, a school-based assessment, or in other countries they call it coursework. So she'd use it for an assignment, but she had left a printing block at school. She'd left school, she hadn't come back to collect it. So I decided to use her printing block. So yes, I stole her block. She left it, she didn't come back for it. But anyway, I've used that as the basis of the design. So the first one you see here is just block printing on a white background. It's as simple as that. I went on over time to work out the design in a more symmetrical, neat fashion, and I cut stencils from these so that I could then create a screen print. Now there's little gaps in my screen printing. It hasn't lined up absolutely perfectly, but it's a good example to use in classes of exactly what screen printing is. So that's the drawing that I did. And then those are the individual pieces for each color. Apart from the screen print, I've also got one with a tie-dye background and then screen printed on top. So that just gives a little bit of contrast from having that plain white background. So let's explore some of the others. Oh, they're all mixed up, I need to turn them around. Once again, this is tie-dyed, and now you can see that I've used the same block print that the student had. I've just printed in black. I've got this nice bright starburst of turquoisey blue in the background going into purple with the block print in black. The same thing was done on this one. I think I have them all sideways, I might have to turn them around. It's tie-dye, block printed, and then couching. So after tie-dye in the background, doing the block print in black, I then used threads and hand stitch these on top, and this technique is known as couching. It comes under embroidery. It's a form of embroidery, and it's just great for highlighting shapes and adding in more texture into your work as well. For this one, I've used the same block print again. You can see printed on a white background, and I've printed the motif in blue, but then I did a bit of Trapunto quilting. Now I came across this term Trapunto in the syllabus for the course that I had to teach, and I had no idea what it was, so I had to do some research. I had to look that up. Over the years I've had many students come to me and say, "Miss, what is Trapunto?" and I've been able to just hand this to them and go, "This is what Trapunto is." It's basically where you do quilting that flattens areas of your design, pulls it down flat so that other areas stand up. For some people, when they do Trapunto quilting, they will slash the back of the work and stuff extra batting inside so that you could get parts to really get puffy. I didn't do that in this one, so it is just the actual batting or wadding that's in there that is causing the puffiness, and then the stitching flattens certain areas. This one, the background once again was tie-dye. I didn't print the design with a block print. I used a stencil and drew it on, and then I hand painted it. So I was able to then paint in an ombre and do some dotted dots on top and do some swells and dots in the background, and I really like that. I love the contrast of that warm deep orange of the motif and the green swirls on the background. I think that really works, so I like that one. This took quite a long time. Hand embroidered. Now I've used things like a chain stitch, which most people who do embroidery are familiar with. Chain stitch is one of the basic stitches that we do, first thing that you learn, but we normally just use it to do a single line. Here I've done row after row after row and filled it in. It almost looks like cane rows or cornrows that we do in black hair. That's what it reminds me of anyway. And then in here I've used different types of stitches, fly stitches, cretin stitch, buttonhole, or I've forgotten the name right now, I'll tell you in a minute, blanket stitch, that's it, blanket stitch around the edge there, and a little worm stitch in the center as well. So they're all creating different textures, different colors. To me this one feels very fern-like, very palm, almost like palm leaves. Okay, this one is just being silly. This is actually one of the last ones I did. You can see it's not even labeled properly. Totally running out of ideas. I literally put a stencil on a piece of paper and spray painted it with spray paint. Not fabric paint, regular spray paint I use on the wall. Not very good, and then I think I went around it with a marker, but yeah, we experiment, it's fun. For this one, I was doing some batik. I hope I'm not picking up that noise outside. I might have to just edit that out. There's a workman passing by. Okay, right, so for this one I've done batik. Drew my design with wax. Applied the dyes with a brush, so it's applied to specific areas. Then waxed over the entire thing and dip dyed it in yellow and crushed it up and got the brown marks all over it. So it's this technique. Batik can be time consuming. Some of the what I've done is faux batik. This one takes quite a bit of time because you have to do one color of dye, allow it to dry, and then do the next one. This one is the one that is faux batik, and it's called faux batik because it's not done in the same way that this would be done. For batik, you do one color, let it dry, then do the next one. With faux batik, I have just painted, applied my wax with my shunting tool, I think if I'm saying it correctly, on my batik kettle. Did some dots of wax in the background, and then I just painted the dyes where I wanted it to go with a paintbrush. That was it. So faux batik's really quick and easy. On here I did some applique. The centerpiece has a little bit of blanket stitch going around it, and then the rest of it was just a quick zigzag stitch. It's not very neat. I don't think I was holding this with any form of embroidery hoops, so there's areas where it's scrunched up a little bit under the machine. So not my best one, not my favorite one, but it's still a good sample of what you can do. And I've got another embroidered one. This one, I think, was the one that I started first. Started it, I'd done the blue sections, lost it, couldn't find where it was, and so I went and did this one that we looked at before. And then I found this again, and I came back and I completed it. So there are tons of different stitches. There's a little basket weave stitch going on there. This is actually a cross stitch, but I've done cross stitch upon cross stitch. This is just literally stitching crazily, randomly doing stitches all over with multiple colors until I fill the space. But I'm really pleased with how that turned out. Now, I've saved this one for last because this is an example of when you do a sample and it's gone wrong. But if you're anything like me, you don't like throwing things away. Let me just line that up so we can see properly? No? Well, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. Okay. If you're anything like me, you don't like wasting stuff. So, what happened here? I tried to do a Trapunto technique. Now, if you've seen my video on tie-dye, you'll know that Trapunto is where you sew the design onto the fabric, pull those sewn threads really tight, wrap them around and dye it, so that the pattern will come out because of the stitching that you've done. I don't know if I hadn't pulled the threads tight enough or if the shapes were too small and finicky, but my Trapunto did not come out very well. It was, you can see little patches, lighter areas here in the background of the purple. But anyway, the design didn't come out very well and I decided I was not going to throw it away. So what did I do? I grabbed another one of these, just plain white fabric with a block printed design on it. I placed my Trapunto on top of it. The background, the purple fabric in the background is actually on top. And then I stitched, just did a running stitch by hand all the way around the 2 layers of fabric. I think I actually did that from the back because I was able to see through this white fabric on the back. And then I cut away the purple fabric. So this is actually a reverse applique. Now if anybody is unfamiliar with that, you know, applique, this one is where you're cutting out small shapes and applying them to a background. Reverse applique is where you are cutting out the surface material and showing the background through. Now this is just 2 layers of fabric. I've got the white fabric with a block print underneath, the purple fabric that didn't work too well on top. I've then done a running stitch so that I had an outline of my design, cut away, just pinch that fabric and cut away the top fabric to reveal the block printing underneath, and then I've done some hand stitching around it, some hand embroidery. Now, those are all of the samples that are in my box set, but I just wanted to run through a few of the things that I have as samples for textile classes that I use as well. These are little examples of batik, so as I'm explaining it to students and I've actually done it as a demonstration, I keep the little samples. This is my lizard batik. I hope you can see that. I think that's actually the right side, it's a little bit brighter. I had not done batik for years. I felt a bit rusty, I had to teach this, so what did I do? I came into school one weekend by myself and tried it out. So there you go, tried it out. And I really like this piece. There's a few little dots and spotches where the wax dripped on it, but on a whole I am very pleased with it. So that's my lizard batik sample. This is another example of a batik piece that didn't go well. The pattern didn't come out very well, the colours didn't work well together. But what I started to do was hand embroidery around it. I never finished this one, but I hand embroidered around it just to highlight the pattern, and that could work really well. This was supposed to be a Trapunto. Once again, that didn't work too well. So I hand painted in sections and then started to do some hand stitching around it. So I'm saving them. And very quickly, this one didn't come out very well either. So I decided to take a paintbrush with some bleach and bleach the pattern back into it. And in line with that, I found a bleach pen one day when I was out shopping, and I thought this is a fantastic idea. So I just took it home one day and decided to experiment, do some bleaching on fabric, see what we could create. And lastly, we were talking about reverse applique earlier. I absolutely love this. Now, I'm going to go really quickly because my battery's dying. Basically, I got a colouring book pattern. There are layers of fabric. Each colour in this is a different layer of fabric. So they're layered one on top of each other, colouring book picture on top. Got to my sewing machine and just stitched along the lines of the colouring book, and then I started after ripping off the paper, I then cut away each layer of the fabric. So the white background is actually the top fabric. You cut away to reveal the blue, you cut away 2 layers to reveal the red, you cut away 3 layers to reveal the black, and so on and so forth. So the black is actually, this is actually right on the back. Now just to finish off really quickly, I've also got some examples of hand embroidery that I've done that I use in classes. So when my students have embroidery to do, I can show them these as examples of what you can do with embroidery. There are no illustrations and no explanation with this, so it means the students can just see an example. Those are filling stitches and those are outline stitches, and then it's entirely up to them, oops, sorry, wrong way, entirely up to them to go and look these up and find out how to do them. So I use these as a way of motivating students. They see examples, they get excited, but then they have to go and find out how to do it. So there you go, folks. I've got lots of other samples I'm going to show you. I've got to go get a new battery and I will be back. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell. Have a good day.